Okay, we're back on the hotspot. Okay, we're live. We'll just wait to see if people join.
We're getting lots of questions. Cool. I love questions. Okay, so who would milk the cows?
You didn't have machines then to milk the cows, so you sat on a stool next to the cow and you used your hands to milk the cow, and either the kids or anyone that was out in the barn would help to milk the cow.
And how big was the farm?
The farm was generally at least 200 acres of a typical farm, and could have been far more than that.
What kinds of other animals were there?
We could have oxen to pull carts, and we said we had the horses and the cows and the sheep and the goats, dogs for herding and the cats for mousing. We could also have had chickens for sure, because we need eggs for baking. We could have had ducks also, because their eggs are wonderful for cooking with too.
Did the colonists watch their animals, or did they just let them roam free? Did they keep an eye on them?
They kept an eye on them.
And what were the different foods that they could make out of animals?
Well, if it was a meat animal, they had the different meat. And of course, our favorite from our pigs is what? Bacon.
And that's the questions for now.
Thank you.
So are we back to our tools?
And we've got 20 on, and the connection looks strong, so we're okay.
Okay.
Oh, we're on it. Good. Okay. How you doing? One of the important tools on a farm was definitely a saw. It was used for chopping trees, getting firewood, cutting lumber. These are a couple examples of 1- and 2-man saws. They could be used either or. This would be used for what's called bucking, and that's cutting the logs this way for firewood or cutting them the length. You notice the handle on it. This is set up for a 1-man. So you can get extra leverage and a firmer grip. And this one is set up for a 2-man, right? So this way, you get 2 people sharing the work. Just makes life a lot easier and a little bit faster. Now, for chopping the trees down, you would start with an axe, similar to this. This would be a felling axe. And then to finish it, you would switch to a felling saw. This is a 2-man felling saw, and you can tell because it's very skinny, which makes it lighter and easier to work horizontal like this. I have another example here. This one hasn't been cleaned up yet, but you notice a difference in the teeth. This style teeth right here is more for hardwoods like oak, hickory, locust. And this style teeth was more for softwoods like pine, some soft maples. But it would basically be used flat to cut the tree down. Another example of a saw you would find very common would be a frame saw similar to this. This up here is used to keep the blade nice and tight, and this would be used more for cutting boards. You know, and you got the handle is down here, and you would use this for, like, if you were building something, cutting board wood.
Floors in your house or furniture.
This is a very common tool It's called a froe. It's used for splitting wood. You can use it for making shingles to put on your house, or just for splitting firewood. I'll show you how it works. You just take your log and you hand you the mallet. You notice that it's very thick, but it does have a sharp edge. You would just set it like this. And your wood is split. Rick, do you have anything to add?
Sure. We were talking earlier about getting up very early in the morning to do chores. Everybody had a job on the farm before you went to school. You may have been the lucky one that had to go out and collect water from most likely a nearby stream or brook if you didn't have a well. And this device here is it's called a training yoke or ox yoke, and you would wear it over your shoulders. I'm gonna get Jim to hang the buckets for me.
Actually, they would be on rope down here.
Yeah, they would be on ropes hanging like this, and this is how you would carry the water back to the house. And that was one of the specific jobs that you would probably be lucky enough to have.
So we're really interested in that, Mr. Solder. So what were some of the other barn chores that a colonial child would do, or colonial people back then, would the colonists would have to do, besides bringing the water? And maybe we can review that, Mrs. Scannell?
Sure. So all of our animals in the morning needed to be fed. And in fact, have a hay rake here that would help to get hay not only put together in the field, but also to get out to the animals in the morning. They all need their feed. They need to have their stalls or their pens cleaned out, because if we don't keep things clean, you're going to have sick animals. And if we have a sick animal, then it doesn't help us.
Yep. So when your animals made a mess in the barn, you would use a shovel. You would have to use a shovel like this, and you'd have to muck the stalls and clean out the barns. And that was another pleasant job that you had.
So you had to milk your cows, you had to collect your eggs, and you had to make sure everybody was settled for the day, turned out into the pastures if they needed to be turned out from the barn, and to get started. And that was kind of what you did in the barn. Many chores in the house, but we'll just talk about the barn.
Right.
Garden in the summer.
What?
Garden.
Oh, in the summer, yeah. In the summer, it gets even more complicated.
Yeah.
Harvesting and
Yeah. About this time of the year is when you would start to prep your gardens and plow and seed and start to get those things together. You make assessments of your barns and your buildings, to see how well that they did.
that cart. That's an oxen cart. That's
For
over
the
there.
how well they did over the winter. So you would be bringing your tools out to make repairs, and there was a lot to do.
In springtime, it was, I guess you could say, it was the original spring break. Schools would actually stop for a short period of time so all the students could be at home to help with the planting season.
And that would happen the same in the fall for harvesting. But what we have over here, you can't see a lot of it in the barn. This is actually an oxen cart. This would have been a cart that would have been drawn by our oxen here on the farm. Do you have one of the yolks?
I
Real
do.
close by.
Yes.
And unlike a horse that would have a harness on to pull a wagon or a carriage, the oxen actually wore something called a yoke. And Mr. Sodler's getting one for you right now to show you how they would do that. Maybe. If it isn't too deep in the dust.
How long would it take them to clear like an acre for farming?
He probably would do it in a day, but I'm not certain. I would think it would take a full day. Because you were having the horses pull that manual plow to clear it. Here, don't knock that down.
This is what you would call a double yoke. This is for 2 oxen side by side. This would actually go around their neck, and it would sit
On their shoulders.
on their shoulders like this, one on each side, and then this would be attached to whatever wagon or implement that they were pulling, whether it be a plow, a wagon, sled.
It's okay. You're not going to have it put on.
This is a smaller double yoke that you would use for smaller oxen, most likely for
Calves.
train or calves, and
For
when
training.
they started to train them.
A lot of times they would even use after they felled a tree, they would actually hook a chain to this and connect it to the tree and use the oxen to drag the tree out of the woods to collect it for the lumber mill or for firewood.
Do you have any questions?
All right, so before we head out for our break, are there any other questions that any of you have? You can go ahead and post it in the chat.
What's an oxen?
So a question from our audience here is, what is an oxen? So what is an oxen?
An oxen is a breed of animal that is similar to a cow, but it's got its own heritage, and it's a much sturdier animal that's really only used for pulling. It's not anything that you really use. Well, you could use it for meat, but not as much as it was a working animal.
And one thing that I do know about oxen is that their feet are very similar to the goat's feet. So oxen shoes are completely different than regular horseshoes. There are actually 2 separate shoes.
Try to lift his foot up so they can see the split foot.
So you see the split foot on. So you would have 2 separate. You would have 1 shoe on this side and 1 shoe on that side.
And we have a question. Was it hard to milk a cow?
No. Once you get used to the hand motion of it, it's not hard at all, because we hand milk the goats too.
And where would people get horses from?
They would either breed the horses themselves. They could have had a mama horse and a male horse, mare and a stallion, and they could have bred them themselves, or they could have traded them with another farmer. So they may have wanted to have some cows, and you traded some cows for a horse. There was a lot of bartering and trading that went on at that time for things.
This is actually an excellent question. What did they do with the manure, the animal manure?
They would use it for fertilizer, just like most of our modern day farms do. Is they spread the manure across the fields, which form as a fertilizer.
Fantastic.
There's been actually a few questions. They just wanted to know what the barn chores were again.
The barn chores. Barn chores was getting up very early and going out. You need to water your animals. You need to feed their animals. You need to milk cows and or goats. You need to collect the eggs from your chickens and your ducks. You need to clean their pens. And then you need to turn animals out into the fields for the day.
And then one last question. Was there a certain time people would work in the barn? Certain time of day?
You would work in the barn very early in the morning before going to school. And then in the evening, you would work again. But during the day while you were at school, your dad and your uncles and maybe your grandfather were doing things around the farm that needed to be done in the line of either maintenance or in planting. So basically, work on the farm was an all-day work. That was your work.
Awesome. So I think we're coming to the end of this part of the workshop. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Take a 15-minute break, and we'll be back at 10:30 visiting with the blacksmith. See you soon.
Hi, guys.
I just thought that because we can't show anything in here.